was a time when almost every cafe in bar, like this one, which is very good by the way, which is what I was hoping to had books like this. They're disappearing now.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like I go to this coffee shop in, this sounds terribly English, in Chipping Sodbury, which is about 20 minutes drive from where we live in Gloucestershire. And they have books there, and it's the usual stuff, you know. But there's a copy of, do you remember John Brosnan?
Yes,
He did that book called, I think it's called Primal Screen, about science fiction cinema.
Oh, that's right.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And I remember at the time always being a bit sniffy about his work and thinking that he was a bit slapdash as a film critic. But every time I go there, I pick it up and I start reading it. And I always really enjoy it. It's really funny.
Well, there's John Brosnan and there's the bloke who lives here.
John Baxter.
He'd always say to me, you know, we'd go out with Claire and Linda, and he'd say, "Let the girls go get on with that chat and we'll." I mean, it was like being in the Chin Chin Club in Singapore in 1920. Anyway,
the Chin Chin Club. Can't say I've been there.
Well, it's gone now. It's now called the Paper Tiger.
Right. I almost met Claire once, which would have been about 2006, and I was running a bookshop at the university, and Claire was doing an Open University summer school there, she's in Bath, and so I spent 10 years running the university bookshop in Bath, doing textbooks as I got fed up with the general side of things, and it was a way of, they couldn't interfere with you, you know, because they just leave you alone, which was great. And it was one of those things where she was coming down to do this summer school and I didn't know, and JG said to her, "Oh, go in and see Steve and take him for lunch." And she came in and I didn't know it was going to happen, and I was on holiday, I was away. So when I got back, and my team were lovely, including a French girl, it was fantastic, said, "This lady called Claire came in," and I was like, "Oh no, I missed Dr. Helen Remington from Crash." You know, I sort of one of my moments of fame is bypassed, you know. So it was really funny. But anyway, you were saying to me about the Gallery Saga editions.
Oh yeah. They have sold and sold and sold.
Great.
I mean, I've made more money from those one edition, as it were, than I've made from any of the others put together.
Yeah, you were saying, you said to me that there was no money from Door, or even from
right.
Granada.
Yes,
That's amazing.
Well, I can't remember his name. You might remember. It was Terry something. He was the head rep at
Granada. Yeah, I did know a Terry. I can't think what his surname
No, I
is.
can't either. But he became, for a short while, he became managing director. Well, they were kind of sorting themselves out. He's a very nice bloke. And he came up to me at a party one time and he said, "You getting any royalties, you know, off your books from Granada?" And I said, "No, I never see a penny." I'd never expected it.
It's bizarre because, you know, I mean, I know it wasn't just me, but I used to sell tons of your books in Granada.
Well, I mean, I know, but it never really clicked. I always expect not to. You know, people not to have heard of me rather than people to have heard of me, people not to have read me rather than people to have read me. It's just the way it is.
But it was a bit bizarre because at that time, I remember mid-80s, because there was the Dancers Omnibus, they had those red liveries, the big plain red liveries. There was the Dancers Omnibus, and there was the Hawkmoon one, used to do their own stuff, and the first Elric book, Elric and Melniboné, was in Arrow, so there was no omnibus. And it was one of those things where people, and the Arrow Elric was out of print for a few years in the early 80s, so people were saying, "Where do I start with Elric?" And it was like, you know, and it was always that thing, because when I came to your work, a few years before that, the end of my teens, because the first thing I read was just the final programme, and because the way the Elric stories had been published in science fantasy and whatever, it wasn't a problem for me to just dive in. I was never too concerned about issues of continuity, and because I understood the multiverse concept, almost intrinsically, nobody explained it to me. I just dived into the chaos, and because the final program was the first book I read by you, and because I was already used to the sort of people that you liked within SF, like Ellison and Bester. I was used, I was open to that approach. I was one of those young readers who I didn't go down the Asimov Heinlein Herbert thing. They never worked. It never worked for me. I read them, didn't work for me. I was more like, Dick, Bester, Ellison,
essentially
Bradbury, the Galaxy and Magazine,
social critic. Writers.
The social science guys, the soft science guys, and that just seemed natural to me because it was in line with my reading taste. It wasn't. So I didn't have any SF reference books then. And I just sort of, they fitted my taste and what I'd grown up reading. Is very much thing. Well, I'm glad they've sold really well. That's great news.
Well, I mean, it's great news for my grandkids.
But it's also they're nice editions, aren't they? They're nice books.
The thing is that authority, as you know as well as I do, is important in a publisher.
Very much so.
Whether it's a newspaper, a magazine, or a book.
Very much so.
And that authority shows through. If the publisher is behind the book, it will show.
And I mean, that's the least you should expect. Because often, as we know from your experience as a writer and my experience as a bookseller, it's so often not the case. This is the thing, and it's a bizarre thing because you always wonder that. Why did they bother? Why did they bother?
There's so many of them like that. I mean, Steve Elric was taken to lunch by an. I think he was going to become the next best thing in the universe. And then they published the books without a peep, really, and that was
they sort of.
And Steve didn't understand that when he was young. Because he thought, well, this is great, they're going to get behind me, get behind the books.
It happens so many times, doesn't it? I mean, it's weird. It's even happened to me with my very modest non-fiction career. When I wrote 100 must-read science fiction novels for A&C Black. And, to be fair, they were great, and they were all over me, and they were good, and I put the final program in that one, by the way. And they were great, they said, what are you going to do next, and what have you. And the book did well, and then the next one did well. The third one, I ended up with a new publicist who was no good.
Absolutely.
And it died without trace. And that was called 100 Must-Read Fantasy. And funnily enough, I put Elric and Melniboné and City in the Autumn Stars, which is one of my favourite books by him. Which makes me digress, because I remember the second time we met, and you came to Bath, and City had just come out, and you did a reading from it. The part where is it the fox? The
fox who reads the encyclopedia.
And he's talking about Diderot. The encyclopedia. And I thought, and I loved that book, and I loved the all the alchemical wedding in it.
Well, it's twice the length, originally.
It's huge, isn't it? Was it really?
The only copy that existed, as far as I know, was with a guy in Devon, who I think is dead now. I don't want to say this, but I know he had some tragedies. It's a guy called David, and he actually wrote some books. John Davey published them. They were about his life on a farm when he was young. He still lived on the same farm, a family farm. But he'd done an interview with me while I watched Forbidden Planet being ripped off for about £1,500. Actually watched while the guy took the money and just thought he was an employee. But that was another story. I felt so stupid about that. But anyway, we did this we did it for Forbidden Planet. And so anyway, that was that. I gave him a copy of the manuscript, and he could only get about, well, he couldn't get all of it copied when I asked him for a copy because I didn't have a copy.
Yeah.
And so I've only got half a copy.
But it's a big book, but I remember that was one of my favourites at that time. And what I like that thing, and this is what I get. I've been asked this, 40 years now in my career, because when I started working in the book trade, I was foaming at the mouth about your stuff, and I was getting it under my belt. And it was at that time where that sort of Tolkien-esque type fantasy boom had been going for a few years. So I've been asked all the time, when's the new David Edis come out, whatever, and I would say, try some Moorcock, push the envelope, And people would say, where do I start? And I'd say, don't worry about where you start, because you will reread this stuff and you will get the frisson of recognition as symbolic things come up again, characters seem to recur. And the thing that really got me in that one was the alchemical wedding sequence, which was rather like to me like the end of the Alchemist's Question from the Opium General, which naturally had its resonances back to the final program and to the opening familial relationships in Elric and Melniboné, and this is the thing. So I'm starting a series of videos about your work because I'm trying to get people away from. I've got this one that's in progress. I'm trying to get people away from this idea that they have to think in too linear a fashion. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because that was always such a big thing for you in New Worlds. You tried to foster within the writers who wanted to do that was the non-linear thing. That was the thing. So that was a big thing for me. So I'm glad the Elric has done well, because they're nice books though, Sarge.
Yeah, they're doing a Von Beck next with City
really?
with the first. Well, the two books.
Yeah.
Warhound,
and then City.
Von Beck,
And
that's their next publication.
Nice. Those are two of my favourites of yours. I think I like your work from every period, but I think it seemed to me. Tell me if I'm wrong, but it seemed to me that in the 80s, end of the 70s, mid 70s, end 70s, into the 80s, you finally had a chance to sit down and not rush to meet deadlines.
Well, there are two things. One is Byzantium Endures, which was the first time I spent more than, say, 6 weeks on a book. Gloriana was 6 weeks.
6 weeks, Mike?
Yeah.
Slow down.
I know, I heard. It's a longer book, though.
Yeah. That's a great book, yeah.
And I had a migraine the whole time I was writing it. It was terrible. But anyway, I kept writing it, thinking, as soon as I stop, the migraine will stop. As soon as I stop, the migraine will stop. And there's a character in there who has a bad migraine. Yeah. And that's me.
I need to go back and read that.
Yeah, well, anyway, it's just a point.
Yeah.
So I knew I had to take longer than that on Byzantium.
Yeah.
And so Byzantium took over 6 months.
Everything I've ever heard, he was obviously very up and down.
He was very up and down. He was clinically ill, and I was always trying to help him. I was always bailing him out.
It's a great shame, innit? Because what a talent.
Oh, quite. Yeah. As I said, I put him in the loony bin, and then I'd go and get him out of the loony bin as soon as he was ready to, as soon as he was done.
It's so sad because such a wonderful lyricist, and I never got to see him perform.
Oh, he was a great performer.
I've seen bits of film and what have you.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think anybody who likes good writing would love his lyrics. They're so.
I hope you know.
Yeah, I'm fine, don't worry. Okay. I'm good. I did plenty of drinking last night.
We can share the same
believe you me, I did plenty last night.
Okay.
But speaking about Elric, something that jumped into my head when you said about the Gallery Saga editions was another book of yours, which I really like. And I think it must have come out, when did it come out in the 90s? Is the Meta-Temporal Detective?
Yes.
Which I love that.
Oh,
I
I'm glad you do, because
that.
I'm redoing
Oh,
those
I thought it was great, you know, that whole thing. And it made me think about, because there's that hardcover edition, which is beautiful.
Yes.
Was there ever a paperback?
No, because Pyre, as you know, I'm sure you know, went under very quickly.
Yeah.
So both Mark Hodder and I, and Mark Hodder, I wrote the recent Sexton Blakes with. And we've just done an albino book, which is a Zenith.
But I was going to come on to Zenith.
Set in Romania and mostly Romania during the 30s.
You were spoiling us.
Well,
I'm looking forward to that.
And it's I love it. I mean, Mark is a perfect collaborator.
That's great news. Speaking of Zenith, because you know it was so hard. Anthony Skeen, I've said it to the audience. Some of them will be, because some of them are mature guys like us who've been around. But some of the young ones won't know about Zenith. And it was all, you know, it was impossible to find the Anthony Skeen Zenith stories, wasn't it? And then Savoy did that beautiful hardcover.
Well, Dave pretty much did everything that I was enthusiastic about. Dave would get enthusiastic about. So Henry Treese, Anthony Skeen,
Jack Trevor Story, Harlan Ellison, Langton Jones.
Well, Harlan Ellison was
Black Tea, and Phoenix of the Ashes as well. Eye of the Lens as well from Langton Jones. Great stuff. Yeah, they did fantastic stuff, and I remember buying that hardcover of Zenith. And they've still got it in stock.
Have they?
You look at the website. They haven't got many left.
No, I know.
And of course, because it's so sought after, to be fair to them.
You can say them. It's actually Mike.
It's Mike now. Yeah. It's just Mike now, isn't it? But to be fair to Savoy, they must have hand for quite. It's priced at about like £100.
Which is probably what it costs to produce.
Yeah, you know, and obviously not many people know about it or want it. And I love those stories, and I love the way that you took that influence of Zenith and meshed it with elements of Elric and Jerry Cornelius and you know, the eternal champion in his albino modes, as it were. And I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah,
and,
I was happy with that.
Yeah.
And it was a proper acknowledgement to Skeen.
Yeah. Because I think I hadn't heard of him until you mentioned him in something, and so I was aware of it probably a couple of years before the Savoy edition came out, and so I just jumped on it, you know, as you know.
Well, John guy lives in Yorkshire, dealer for years. Was briefly a partner with Stan Nichols. I just can't remember his name. John, old friend of mine. I mean, it's not.
I don't know the northern dealers. It's the southern.
Well, he lives in that posh village in Yorkshire somewhere.
Hebden Bridge.
Yeah.
Do you know, it's funny, isn't it? A friend of mine moved there years and years ago, and he was a very bright lad, shall we say. Rosary cooking this, and he moved there.
Yeah.
So I instantly get
Mike Harrison lived there for a while.
Yeah, he did.
We used to have to drive the bugger back and forth.
With his rock climbing and stuff. Yeah. But so that's great news. So there's going to be a new edition of Meta Temporal Detective.
Well, with Mark. Because Mark is the perfect guy to do that.
I read his book. What was the first novel? The Spring Heel Jack. Because you did a little blad on that, didn't you?
Yes,
yeah. And that's why I picked it up. I picked it up because I thought, because you know, you're one of those people. You know, you get this thing, don't you? You get the nepotism or what have you, and we always want to help our friends and say the books are good. But it was one of those things where if I saw a endorsement from you or from JG, you know, it was an uncommon thing, you know, and you know, obviously having similar tastes in it, so I jumped on it. It was good, I enjoyed that one. Yeah.
Well, I think it was his first book.
That was his first, I think. Yeah.
He did a strange thing. He sued his bank.
He sued his bank.
His bank made a serious mistake in his banking, And so he sued his bank and against all odds got a decent sum from them, which he used. He worked at the BBC, which he used to give up his job and see the world. He went round Cuba for 6 months, and I mean, you know, he's now in Spain. Speaks very good Spanish, of course.
Why not? Yeah.
And so, you know, he'd always wanted to write. He's a Sexton Blake fan, of course. He runs the Sexton Blake site. And you know, so off he went, and I've never met him.
Oh, really? It's like that now, isn't it? This is the thing, you know. It's that strange thing. I mean, I'm in touch with people online, and we all say it, particularly those of us who are older, you know. So I'm in touch with people I haven't seen for 30 years, you know, and I was really friendly with.
Do you want another coffee, by the way?
I'm okay, thanks.
Well, I'll wait. Will you need another cup of coffee?
I'll be absolutely fine.
Okay, well,
you have one if you want. I'm absolutely fine. But I'm thinking about people whose work you've enjoyed in recent years. I mean, a few years ago, I was delighted to see you did a little blurb on a book by a friend of mine, a book called Soft Invasions by James Reich.
Oh yeah.
Which has got sort of trade paperback and California, and James and I used to work together. We worked together for about 5 years. We worked in a bookshop together, and he lives in New Mexico now, has done for about 10 years. And he's a great little novelist, really interesting novelist, and lovely guy. And we used to sort of play music together and stuff and things. And he was really pleased that you had your, because I think you said something like that it felt almost elegiac, you know. And he also got a plaudit from Barry N. Malsberg on something as well, because he was delighted by it. And it's funny because I got James into Barry. I mean, when I met him,
he's the saddest man in science
fiction. Do you know,
I
find I can't imagine anybody else would be sadder, and I've never met him. I've been in contact. I love his work. You know, I always found his work incredibly bracing.
Before he started work,
so
he was working for Scott Meredith.
Scott Meredith, wasn't he? Yeah, Norman was working for Scott Meredith, wasn't he? Yeah,
well, a lot of Paul did. I mean, lots of people did.
Lots of people did.
I was at, I think it was the Ace elevator. I'd been to see Waldheim anyway.
Right.
And Barry, for some reason,
you'd been to see Mr. Dorr himself.
Well, I knew Don fairly well.
Yeah. This isn't just name dropping, folks. You know, this is the real thing. But
no, Don, I think is underrated because he kept a huge amount of fantasy and science fiction of good quality going for years.
As you will have seen, looking at my channel and other things that pop up on YouTube. Everybody goes mad for the Dorr books.
Yes,
they go bonkers for them.
Well, and Don also did have decent taste.
Yeah, there's lots of good stuff.
I mean, it's not necessarily great by modern standards, but by the standards of the day, he picked the best.
Yeah.
And another guy called Larry Shaw, who was another fan, a little bit younger than Don, did Lancer books.
Yes.
So what Don wasn't doing in Ace and then later Dorr, Larry was doing in Lancer.
Because there's the Lancer edition of Elric of Melniboné, which is called The Dreaming City.
More important is The Dying Earth, which he was the first to put into any kind of mass edition. Yeah, the Jack Vance. Yes.
Yeah.
Which I think is one of the one of the key books.
Wonderful.
And certainly introduced readers to that sort of style.
Yeah. That sort
Clark
of
Ashton Smith.
Yeah.
And then and Smith before that, but the aesthetes.
When anybody talks about, and it's a term that's been 25 years or more now, and they talk about the new weird. And when China Michael first came along, for example, and people say, "What do you think?" And I'd say, "Oh, it's okay," but he makes me think of M. John, and M. John makes me think of Mervyn Peake, and it makes me think of Clark Ashton Smith and some of your Jack Vance and your work. So it's that lineage is there, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
That's the thing. I tell me somebody whose work I like a lot, and she hasn't had any books out for a while. I know you knew her years ago. I'm not sure if you're in touch with her now. Is Chelsea Yarbrough?
I knew her and was a fan of hers.
back in
many
the
years
70s.
ago.
Yeah.
Her first
Yeah.
wave of books,
Yes,
which I
yeah.
still admire,
Yeah, they're
and which
fantastic.
which were excellent. I mean,
Yeah,
they
they're
were
great
well
books.
researched. Everything about them was good.
I've just reread the first Saint Germain book, Hotel Transylvania, and I like, of her early work, I like, it's not Time of the Fourth Horseman, it's the other one.
I don't know.
False Dawn, which is like a post-apocalyptic thing. That's a very
I haven't read any of her science fiction.
But those early Saint Germain books, I mean, I've read all of them. I went through a big phase of those about 15 years ago. But all those early ones are fantastic books. And it's the research and...
Absolutely.
You get that feeling of great intensity from people like her and I imagine Susie LaKey-Chalmers.
I don't know. Jack. What's her name? Yeah. Well, Joanna Russ. No.
No. Right.
No. Nor indeed, if you're going to sort of the one who just died. Tarot, a tarot expert.
Who
we first published. Rachel Pollack. We first did her as Richard Pollack in
Yes,
in
of
New
course.
World. And then as Rachel Pollack. I mean, it was a smooth transition. Probably smoother for us than for her, as it were. She was fine, but a few of them were just a little bit
intense.
Yes,
it's interesting.
I had the same problem with Tanith. It was like I was kind of being pushed back by the.
I tell you what, but did you know?
Not Storm Constantine.
No.
I have to say.
Yeah, she was lovely, wasn't she?
Was,
I met her at a con in Bristol, which would have been about 2016, 2018. And not long before she died, which was very sad, wasn't it? And she was absolutely lovely.
She was.
She was so nice.
The first time I saw it was at Linda and I both saw it. It was at the Brighton World Con.
Yeah.
And she came in with her sort of entourage of goths.
Yeah.
And they were the only really good-looking lot there. It was just stunning to see them come in.
See, that's where you and I first met very briefly, because you appeared and did a signing for about 2 hours.
Yes.
And I was in the queue and you signed a few things to me. And it was the following year I got you to Bath when Mother London came out. And we did that Saturday. And we sold 120 books that day. We sold 50 of Mother London, lots of other things. And I don't know if I told you at the time, you've probably forgotten, it was a long time ago. But what I did, when I got in touch with Secca and we set it all up, and I was really excited because even though I'd been in the industry a few years, I'd never done an event which I wanted to do. And I really wanted to do it for Mother London. And I know it was a big one for you. And what I did with lots of the flyers and posters is I put them up in pubs and takeaways and things. And of course, on the day we had lots of people with long hair and leather jackets, just like we used to be, turning up then, and it was fantastic. And it was that thing of my boss was a heck of a nice guy then. And I did everything. I organised everything. And he said, I think we got this right. And I thought, we've got it right. I've got it right. And Mike's got it right. So it was a fun thing. So, but I mean, in thinking about Paris, just a quick aside about Chelsea Yarborough. I'm sure you know this, that Hotel Transylvania is over on the left bank. The real place. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Honestly, I'll send you the details in an email just
honestly,
so you know.
I haven't.
It's like a boutique.
I haven't spent any time in her on the left bank since it became such a big tourist area.
It's on Quai de Malaquais. It's right on the Seine. And I walked past it this morning. In fact, I was telling my friend about its history because, of course, what happened there was that the actual Transylvanian prince, Lugosky II, he was there, and of course hotel meant like house, didn't it? And he had no money left after some war he was involved in Spain, and he did this thing where he was gambling there to try and rebuild his fortunes, and it didn't work. And then, of course, the real Comte de Saint-Germain is about 30 years later, and what she did very cleverly was melded the two together, which I thought was really, really good. You know? But speaking about, you know, writers in Paris.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to catch the attention of the...
Excusez-moi.
Excusez-moi. Un autre café, s'il vous plaît. Merci.
Norman Spinrad lives over the left bank, doesn't he?
Yes, he does, right.
Had about 100 yards from Shakespeare Company, doesn't he? Yeah.
Which used to be called Mistral.
When
I was first in Paris.
Yeah.
George was running it, the same thing.
Oh, you said, yes, yeah. Because people think it's the original Shakespeare Company. It's not, is it?
No.
Because that closed in 1947.
All he did was buy a little bit of, what's her name's, I can't have forgotten her name, but anyway, her library, and used that to call.
So he bought some of Sylvia Beach's library.
And now, a lot of people don't want to go there, just ordinary residents, as it were, because every time you go in, you have to stop them stamping the book from Shakespeare and Company, and you get lines of these American students all thinking they've got a straight run back to Hemingway and Joyce.
This is the thing, isn't it? I was there last year, and I'm going to go on a couple of days' time, a friend of mine, and we were here last year, me and my partner, and she said, "Do you want to go in?" And I said, I don't care to go in a bookshop. I spend too much time, but I am going to go in just. But I was talking to people outside, saying to people, you know, it's not the real.
I'll tell you where to go if you want to look for something maybe worth finding. That isn't overpriced, and that's the San Francisco Book Exchange.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I looked that up.
Run by the two Jims.
Found it. I found it in a guide, and I thought that looks good. So
it is good. Almost all the paperbacks that I've bought, in second-hand paperbacks, have been from San Francisco, and that's where I used to sell my books too. If I needed to.
Because you know we have to do that now and again, don't we?
Well, it's spacey. I mean, where we live is not much bigger than this table, and messy. Yes, sir. Messy, thank you. It's not much bigger than this table, and so I have to, I've got, Linda won't let me go over to her side. She's got half of it.
I mean, I'm the same. My house, you just cannot move. It's just, and you think, why have I got all this stuff? But you love it, don't you? This
well,
is the
I know, and also,
and you never know when you need to pick something out.
Exactly.
And it comes back to haunt you, to spark something.
And I still can't read Zoom, not Zoom. What's it called? Kindle. I can't read Kindle in bed. It's almost impossible for me to do that.
But it's not the same, is it?
No, it's not. No.
People say to me in work, there was a big thing when people were going to e-readers, and a couple of years it was the thing, and then they say, "Oh, I gave mine up," and I always say the same thing, which sounds dreadfully cliche, but I always say a book has a soul.
Yes.
The book is more than the text. It's the bindings, the jackets, the iconography.
Previous readers'
it's everything. It's all those things. It's like, you know Nicholas Royal's work, I'm sure? Because Nick has done that. He's done a couple of books about book collecting. I don't know if you've read them.
No, I haven't.
They're really funny. They're very funny indeed. Because he's a real obsessive, as most bibliophiles are. And,
I knew him better than I knew his work.
He's a great little writer. I love his stuff. And I've been in touch with him a couple of times. Lovely stuff, really good.
He was a great fan of Mike Harrison's too.
And of course, I think I first read him in the 80s when he started doing short stories and that. But I think he's a good novelist as well. I wish he'd write more novels. But he wrote two very funny books. And the second one, which came out only about 6-8 months ago, is about what he calls inclusions, where people find a piece of paper or something written in a book.
Yes, absolutely.
And he goes to this bizarre thing where he writes to people if there's an address or what have you. So funny. It's such a good idea for a book,
I put odd bookmarks in books that I'm going to probably get rid of because that way, just strange things like they're not really not bookmarks as such, but things.
Yeah.
You know,
this is what he calls them inclusions. It's like tickets.
Yes, that's
stuff
right.
like that.
Yeah,
you know, receipts and things. So.
And my best friend here, and one of my very closest friends, is Jean-Luc Fromental.
Yeah.
Who
I know that name.
well, he ran Metal Allen for
a while.
of
course, yeah.
And his
heavy metal, as we say in English. Yeah.
And his well, he won a César.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, the equivalent of the Oscar, and so you know he's pretty well known now. Writes children's books mostly. Wonderful children's books.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah.
But anyway, what was I going to say about him?
We've both forgotten.
Yeah.
We'll get to it.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Somebody, a huge fan of yours who watches my channel. You've got lots of huge fans who watch my channel. There's one in particular. He wanted to know two things, and I promised I'd ask. And it was, do you have enough unpublished poetry to ever do a poetry book?
Not really.
That was my feeling.
I mean, if my poetry, most of it was written when I was in my late teens, early 20s.
Yeah.
Anything else tends to go into books, as Ernest Weldrake.
Yeah.
And is
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
But I promised I'd ask because
I do like writing sonnets.
Yeah.
But when you see Rose's sonnets, she's so good, such a brilliant poet that I can't.
Ros, now who is Ros?
Ros Caveney.
Oh right, I thought you met Ros Caveney.
Sorry. Yeah. There's another person I know for years and years.
I met Ros Caveney once in the early 90s. I didn't realise because Ros does a lot of reviews and stuff.
Yes,
obviously.
she's incredibly literate.
I think I met Ros. I think it was when there was that anthology, Tales from the Forbidden Planet, and there was like a big author tour for that. Yeah. And I'm trying to think who was. I'm sure Neil Gaiman was on that tour. They did like a tour.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think who else was on it.
Well, Rose,
but that's when I met Ros.
Rose edited it.
I think so. Yeah. I think you're right. Yeah, I think Ros did. Yeah. The other question, this will make you laugh probably, because again I felt it was a no. But there might be something I don't know, and with your rock and roll past and my rock and roll past, this fan really wanted to know. He will love this. So thank you for letting me ask you this. Were you ever involved, or were you ever a fan of Jethro Tull?
No, I mean that is to say yes.
Right, that is to say yes.
I mean I like Jethro Tull.
Yes,
and I liked them live.
Yeah.
But I never knew them.
No, I didn't.
I was never involved with them.
No, I didn't.
I'm trying to remember what the connection was. Maybe they supported us at some point.
Yeah. Would that be Hawkmoon?
Yeah. Or usually I met other bands because they were supporting, or we were supporting them. Depending on the.
Well, because obviously all the stuff that you do with Hawkwind, stuff you got for Blue Oyster Cult, and the Deep Fix album, of course, and all bits and pieces. I know all that stuff, and I said I don't think, but I thought, well, I'll ask.
No, I had liked Jethro Tull.
Speaking of music, I've really those Spirits Burning albums. I've really enjoyed those.
Yeah, I mean they're amazing. I mean I didn't have anything to do with it. It was almost mostly Albert.
Albert Bouchard from Blue Oyster Cult. Who is it DeFalco?
Oh
Falcone,
no, Don Falcone. We call him the Don.
Yeah. He seems like a nice guy.
His name is Donald Falcon, but
I've interacted with him a little bit.
Italian origin.
He seems like a nice guy as well. Funny enough, I know somebody who I'm sure you probably won't have met him. He lives in Bath near me. He plays some guitar and a bit of synth on one of the records, a guy called Steve Beamond. And Steve Beamond, he stood in for Dave Brock way back in the early 90s when Hawkmoon were doing a tour of Europe. They did a European tour, and there were a lot of young Turks coming to the band. Harvey Bainbridge was there, and Dave wanted to stay at home and mix an album that they'd done, or I think it's a live. And he got this guy Steve Beamont, who had been in a band with Richard, the drummer, who's been the drummer like for a long time now. And Steve stood in for Dave Brock. Dave Brock said, "Oh, you know the songs, you can sing it." And it's quite nice. And I thought, well, you've never met him, and he and I met. I didn't interview him the chat. He's a heck of a nice chap, really good guy.
Now, all I play on those is mouth organ. Right. And vocals.
So I've heard your vocals on.
But I'm not doing any of the major stuff. None of it is mine. It's all. It's pretty much the Bouchard brothers. It's
interesting stuff, though. It's good. It's nice the way it's taken lots of the themes and the ideas from the dancers.
Absolutely.
It's really good. So, but
getting a bit chilly.
But somebody else from music who crossed that divide. Well, I wanted to ask you about, and I know you knew him, Martin Stone. You knew Martin.
Martin was a close friend. And it was brilliant, but
I always thought it was really funny when Martin said he gave up rock and roll for book collecting because it was more exciting.
Yes,
so funny.
Well, it's true, really.
Because what was that band he was in? He was in that band.
Well, he was in
before Chili Willy and the Red Hot.
Oh yeah,
what was that band called? I've got albums by them and everything. I can't think what they're called.
The Action was his first band, which was a mod band. Yeah, and they changed their name to Mighty Baby.
Mighty Baby, that's what I'm thinking. Those are great records.
We were neighbours. We grew up in the same part of the world.
So he was a Ladbroke Grove sort of guy?
No, this was in South London where I was born. And he and I both used the same bookshop, and he was younger than me, and he said he would always look. I used to have a stamp, which was the Edgar Rice Burroughs Society, which went into every book I had. I mean, there was and he would look for the stamp. Because he'd know that if I'd read it, then he would probably like it. He actually was an expert on another writer, an English fantastic writer, and I can't remember his name now. He wrote The Purple Cloud and MP Shield. I think it was MP Shield. Anyway.
That sounds right.
He was at that time. The first time I met him, he was in, I think it was Mighty Baby. The Action had broken up, or it was either just on the point where the Action was turning into Mighty Baby. And they were supporting us at a gig, I can't remember where or anything. And he came up to me and said, he liked my stuff. But I was so used to that, because for some reason I was the rock and roll music player's favourite writer. I mean, from way back to the R&B days. But Zoot Money just died, and he was one of my great.
I know. You always also references to Zoot Money and the Fatal Programme and the early Cornelia stories.
And Andy Summers, who was in Zoot's band.
Later the Police.
Was in the Police.
But this is the thing. I mean, obviously there's about 20 years between you and me. But we both grew up in that period of modernity where the continuity between popular music and popular writing, it was all part of a continuum.
Well, it was to us.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it?
But it was your generation that really had it. My generation didn't have it very much. I mean, I was the only person of all the, apart from, I would say he was a bit younger, Lang Jones, and Charles Platt. Lang wasn't really into pop music; he was a classical, but he loved Zoot Money. I mean, just as much as I did. I mean, because he's an incredible keyboard player. Well, both were. Lang was too. But of course, he played Schoenberg rather than.
But I mean, to us it was part of the continuity. It really was. So, but every now and again I watch. I look at The Cardinal and the Corpse. from Channel 4,
Yes, yeah.
which you pop up in,
Yeah.
and all those great London writers are in it, like Alexander
Raymond.
Barron,
Yes.
Derek Raymond.
Yeah. All the people that Ian Sinclair has tended. Oh, but there's a Sabarian Sinclair in there for you too.
Oh, really?
Which I didn't sign.
Oh, right. Well, that's great. I'll get him to sign it.
Yeah. I signed the other one. So.
Oh, that's very kind.
Yeah, I mean just. So you can get rid of the other one if it comes.
I think somebody else has had it, so I'm very pleased. Because
right.
I bought it when it came out, and I know it's super scarce now. Now, I may be out of touch with this, but what this is again for the fan base more than me, because I said to them I'll just film you and me having a chat, and to catch up. But what happened with? Didn't the BBC buy the rights to Hawkmoon? Did that?
Oh, it was BBC Studios.
BBC Studios.
Who bought an option on Hawkmoon.
They bought an option, right?
And they did a very good job of presenting it, but they couldn't sell it to anybody.
That's such a shame.
Then, just a year or two back now, David Goyer, who has had a huge number of successes with a lot of science fiction, a lot of Neil's stuff, the Batman movies.
Is that G-U-Y-E-R?
G-O-Y-A.
Oh, right, as in the artist.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, is that no? Whichever.
Yeah.
Anyway, look it up because
I will. I look it up.
Anyway, this very smart guy. He's the smartest guy I ever met who approached me. He had a great idea for the Eternal Champion series. Apple were put up the money, and they put up a handsome amount of money. Which essentially we're still living on. And everybody expected it to go forward. Great script. Everything was in the garden was lovely. I never expect anything to go forward because
long experience.
As I've often said, I don't believe a film has been made or a TV series until I actually go into the cinema and see it playing on the screen. As usual, as it's happening now, a lot of people I know won't work in films anymore. Is the turnover in top brass at all of these places is so considerable and what they do is they tend to throw out the previous lots
work
and bring in their own stuff.
I've heard this. That's a common thing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So
that's a shame,
I mean, like one bloke I know has become a farmer rather than carry on in films, and he's probably doing better as a farmer. He's very good. His produce is excellent.
So tell me now. One sort of final question, really, which of all your books, and I know it's hard because there's so many, but is there one, or there are a couple, or is there a series? What do you wish the larger corpus of your readership would pay more attention to? What would you like to see people pay more attention to?
I suppose it's the things that you haven't been able to get into or don't much care for. And that is blood. And War Amongst the Angels. There's, the short story collection in the middle.
I love that.
I mean, that's some of my best short stories.
You know how it is. I mean, sometimes it's a matter of your mood and what's going on.
It could be.
So I've had many times when I've gone back.
What I was going to suggest to you is that you've told off readers for not trying harder to get into certain books, like the Cornelius books.
So you're going to tell me.
So I'm going to tell you off for not trying hard. Well, I never believe in trying hard, right?
No.
You've got to enjoy it.
I'll try and redeem
the
myself.
current books,
I've just read Woods of Arcady.
You've read that? Did you read the one before?
Yes. And I loved it. I really like.
Well, I can tell you for nothing, the third one is now done and is the worst book I've ever written in my life.
I don't believe
Linda agrees. I'm going to rewrite the whole thing. I don't know what the hell happened. We can't think what happened.
Well,
except too much text.
If you feel it needs doing, it needs doing. But I really enjoy Woods of Arcady, and I love the way that in both those books, in Whispering Swarm as well, but more so in Woods of Arcady, how you go back into autobiography and the way you play with that, and having been a fan of yours for a long time, knowing a lot of you know, the cultural stuff we've been talking about, the music stuff. You know, I pick up a lot of references and things, and it's a real joy, you know, to be doing. It must be so much fun to write as well.
People seem to like, no, they're very, very hard to write.
Yeah.
Extremely hard to write, because I'm constantly having to worry about, this is, well, I'll tell you how they came about. I may have told you, I mean, I don't know if I mentioned this, but anyway, the guy at Cape, who was my editor, he said, "Can you do me an autobiography?"
Right,
This is how I split from Kate, by the way.
Right, yeah.
Because whatever Kate was, they're not really the same as they used to be.
No.
I know you like Kate because I've seen your program.
I liked them then.
Yes. Yeah. Well, they've degenerated. Well, they're part of them.
Funnily enough, somebody I worked with, going back to the early 90s, was very briefly high up in Cape, and he and I didn't get on, and he lasted about 6 weeks there, and I was quite glad of it.
Well, you know, anyway, this was I can't kind of remember his name. Nice enough, you know, but anyway, he said, "Can you do me an autobiography?" And I said, "Well," I said, I suppose I could. I said, "But the trouble with doing a proper, authentic autobiography that tells the truth is that you're likely to hurt people's feelings. And even if they're dead, you're likely to hurt their children's feelings.
It's tough, isn't it? Yeah.
And I just didn't want to do it.
No.
So I came back to Paris, where we were living then, and I spoke to my friend Jean-Luc Fromental, and I said, you know, and I then said to him, I don't, you know, I'll hurt people's feelings. And he said, "Don't worry about that. We'll put the lawyers onto it."
Right.
And I said that wasn't really the point.
Right. No.
And it was at that point I just pulled away from him. I mean, I'm not inclined to have fights.
No.
I'm inclined to just cease to have any. I'm very, if you like, loyal to my friends. And so my loyalty disappears.
I mean,
I suppose, whatever it is.
our sort of interactions in the past, you know. So there's been this thing with Shovel Strike.
Yeah. Anyway, so Jean-Luc said, "Why don't you put it into fiction and present it as fiction? And that way, you know, you're not likely to. I mean, there's still there's still some problem.
You know.
Well,
and it's also that thing where, for me, always having enjoyed that intertextuality of your work. It's that whole thing about the ambiguity and truth being subjective, and you know, reality being malleable and what have you. So I think it fits really well.
Well, that's also because I don't trust my own memory necessarily. I mean, we're all the same.
We've all got unreliable memories.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very much so.
So I don't want to ever present it as my version of the truth.
No.
I do, just as my version of the truth, but not the truth.
No.
Because, you know, I know very well, you know, well, I mean, being married, you know, as you know, just enough to tell you that you have totally different memories of course, and can get into fierce arguments over them sometimes. So
how congenial guys like us?
Yes, I know, exactly. It's just astonishing.
How's that going to happen?
Yes.
But I really loved it, so I'm looking forward to the new book. Well, but we're going to have to wait a bit longer then, obviously.
You would anyway, because the Albino Secret is coming out in the meantime.
The Albino Secret,
which is the Zenith story, the Meta Temporal Detective story. We're doing another one, which is set in in Russia at the time of the revolution, just before the Bolshevik Revolution.
Wow.
And there's a lot of snow in that one. But
do you know? Tell me, speaking about a lot of snow, and that's a metaphor. Do you know a Russian novel which must be from the early part of the century? I used to have a picador of it by somebody called A.G. Ajayev, called Novel with Cocaine. Do you know that?
Yes, I know it, but I haven't read it.
Yeah, I've read it.
And that's unusual, because I've got probably the best collection of early 20th century into the 20s and 30s, into the Stalinist period. Which are often very good. And it's an almost completely unknown area of fiction.
You will have read Russian stuff before that.
Oh yeah.
You've read Leonid Andreev?
Yes.
Yeah. Now there's somebody I don't think anybody apart from you and me have read. So there's a few others I think. Because there's some back in print now, which is amazing.
Well, but, again, things don't, as I said into the media web, as the first sentences, I think, nothing invented ever dies.
No.
It might go dormant for a while, but then a group of people will discover something, like William Blake was discovered by the Pre-Raphaelites. I think Rossetti paid somebody $5 bob to steal the Jerusalem from the British Museum, and thereafter Blake became known. And Moby Dick's another good example.
I mean Melville died in poverty, didn't he? Obscurity.
Absolutely.
I love Melville.
I do too. But again, we wouldn't know about Melville if it hadn't been for rediscovery.
Thanks to those people.
And Ian Sinclair, he almost on his own rediscovers. I mean, he's made a job out of it.
Yeah, he has, and he does a great job of it. Well, Mike, I think we've probably used up a lot of what we have, but so we'll wind it up now. But it's brilliant to see you now after so long. It really is, and you look just the same as far as I'm concerned.
Apart from your legs.
Yeah, and the same year, and you're it's so nice to see you because we always had such great interactions.
Yes, well, I was enjoying. Well, I mean, I'm a whore for not publicity, but for meeting people.
Yeah, but you have to be.
I'm a natural stage performer.
Yeah, you are, and this is the thing, and it's a right there. You have to be, don't you? Because it's hard enough to get people to read as it is.
Well, people are always wary when I say, "Well, I'll read it myself."
Yeah.
And I'm pretty good at it. And I feel like I was going to read. I offered to do the audiobook. I think it was The Whispering Swan, which would have been a perfect thing. They didn't trust me. They said, if you do it for nothing, meaning that if we don't have to pay for it, we can get somebody else to do it. And I felt insulted.
It's a shame, isn't it? Same.
Anyway,
we're going to check it out there. Thanks very much, Mike.
Okay.
It's brilliant to see you.
You're welcome.
And I'm going to turn this off now. And we're going to keep talking. So you guys will see this soon. Thanks very much, Mike.
Thank
Cheers.
you.